was extremely close, with both men getting 43%. George Wallace finished far behind, winning 5 states in the Deep South with 45 electoral votes. And while the up and down vote count went on, Edmund Muskie spent election night with his family at Waterville, Maine. For a report on the mood in the Muskie camp, we go to David Burrington at Muskie's headquarters. No, we're not ready with Muskie yet. Well, I'll have to find that one. I thought that was the one we didn't have. Anyway. All right. So we'll go to Mr. Muskie after a while, but right now, Spiro Agnew, Richard Nixon's running mate, had told newsmen only yesterday that he hoped to win, but he put it this way, he was fully prepared to lose, too. For a report on the Agnew camp, we switched to Charles Quinn at Agnew headquarters in Annapolis, Maryland.
Spiro Agnew is sleeping now, or at least he was up until a little while ago, we're told. He went to bed soon after he made a brief appearance here in the ballroom of the Statler Hilton in Annapolis about, several hours ago. At the time, he said he was confident the Republicans were winning, and in fact would win. This confidence was shared, but not without some doubts, by about 200 partisans who cheered him at what he called that outrageous hour. Agnew watched the results from his quarters at the governor's mansion just a couple of blocks from here. He was, of course, disappointed that the Republicans failed to carry his home state of Maryland. It was that, and the perplexing votes from some of the big states, which filled so many people here with some doubt, with fear that they had perhaps lost it again. Much of those doubts have passed now, with the electoral vote almost within Richard Nixon's grasp. If the Republicans win, Agnew will spend the rest of the week here working on the transition of state power to a new governor, probably a Democrat to be chosen by the Democratic-controlled state legislature. And then he plans a vacation, probably a week or two in the Virgin Islands. This is Charles Quinn, NBC News, in the Statler Hilton at Annapolis.
More election news coverage in just a moment. Right now, the time is 23 minutes before the hour. And here's Hugh with what we think is a very happy message.
Yes, a couple of times each week, Barbara and Frank and Joe and myself take a minute to talk with you about the big lift drink, milk. I can't think of a more wholesome, healthy, and happy kind of beverage to talk about. Milk is truly like apple pie and corn on the cob and mother, those things. It's everything good. Sometimes I think we ought to take it a little more seriously, because your health and your family's health is the most important thing in the world. And here we have nature's most nearly perfect food to help you stay healthy, to give you a big lift that lasts. You see, when you drink milk with meals and snacks, you don't just get quick energy. You get energy and vitality to get you going and keep you going. And here's the important thing to remember. Most adults still need to drink milk, at least 2 full glasses every day. Now, if you aren't a milk drinker, you are missing something. You're missing a big lift that lasts. The American Dairy Association hopes that you'll enjoy milk today. Now back to Frank, more news.
The Democrats easily retain control of both houses of Congress. In the Senate that takes office in January, there will be 58 Democrats and 42 Republicans. 2 veteran Democratic senators, Mulroney of Oklahoma and Clark of Pennsylvania, lost their seats, and Republicans also won in Florida and Maryland. In one of the highly publicized Senate races, Alan Cranston, a Democrat, beat out Max Rafferty, a conservative Republican, in California. Cranston will take the seat held by Thomas Kuchel, the liberal Republican who lost to Rafferty in a bitter primary race. Barry Goldwater won a Senate seat in Arizona that had been held for many years by 91-year-old Carl Hayden, who retired. Goldwater's returning to Capitol Hill 4 years after his defeat by Lyndon Johnson in the 1964 presidential campaign. In the contests for governors, Republicans took over in 7 state houses formerly held by Democrats, and 2 Democrats defeated Republican incumbents. A Republican won in Vermont, where the Democratic governor did not run for re-election. Republicans also won in New Hampshire, Delaware, Indiana, Iowa, and West Virginia. Democrats won Rhode Island and Montana. That brings us to almost 20 minutes before the hour. And now here is Barbara with a word about the National Observer.
Thank you, Frank. Certainly today, but every day in today's fast-paced world, women must be able to talk about a lot more than just babies and recipes. And that's why so many women have found the National Observer to be just what the doctor ordered. It's a new kind of national weekly newspaper for the whole family. Quickly and quietly, without scare headlines, it keeps you informed on the nation and the world, the arts and sciences, books, sports, travel, entertainment, elections, and much more. The National Observer not only tells you what is happening, but also why. And you'll also find that the National Observer will provide your whole family with a lot of news you can use, practical news, to help you get more out of living. And if you act today, you can get advantage of the special trial subscription offer. The next 20 weekly issues sent to your home for only $2.67. You send no money, just your name and address to the National Observer, Box 88, New York, New York, 10017. That's the National Observer, Box 88, New York, New York, 10017. Hugh?
Frank has more news for us in a moment. No? Well, he will have shortly, as we keep you posted on the goings-on here in Election Central and across the nation. A little bit later, we want to get a chance again to talk with John Chancellor, whom you heard at the beginning of this half hour. Also with Ed Newman and Sander Vanoker on several subjects. We're going to deal a little bit more with the missing precinct tallies that we've talked about, which appear to have brought things to a momentary standstill. We also want to get a little bit of a breakdown for you as to income groups, how they voted, to what extent the war was an issue in analyzing the returns. Possible breakdown of ethnic votes and whether civil rights was as much of an issue as it was not at each convention. Many surprises in the way, both in the turnout and the composition of that turnout. We'll talk to these men about that very shortly. If Frank doesn't have more news at this time, we're going to have another little message for you in a couple of minutes. To give you the time, it's 18 minutes before the hour now. Why don't we give you that message right now? You know, nowadays everybody's watching calories and what he eats.
Richard Nixon, at this moment, is within a hair's breadth of victory in the 1968 presidential election. The Republican now needs only 9 votes in the Electoral College to defeat Hubert Humphrey. With 92% of the popular vote counted, each major party candidate has 43%, although Nixon is slightly in the lead. There are 4 states still undecided, and Nixon could become the 37th president of the United States if he won in any one of 3 of them, Missouri, Illinois, or Texas. Humphrey, on the other hand, must carry all of these states, all 3 of them, and 1 more, Alaska, to win the 270 Electoral College votes needed. George Wallace has carried 5 states and won 14% of the popular vote. Among Nixon's aides, there is a feeling of jubilation. A report from Herbert Kaplow at Nixon headquarters in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City.
Yeah, I'll shoot plenty of.
They're not quite ready there at the Waldorf Astoria. We'll go back there a little later on, probably in this hour. In the meantime, we'll go on with this. Humphrey had made his last public appearance at his headquarters in Minneapolis at 2:30 in the morning, and he said that he was optimistic about the outcome.
Some members of my family have already seen fit to retire in confidence, and others have decided to stay up. But we have, as you know, several of the very important states that are nip and tuck, where the decision, I'm sure, will not be known until sometime at least late tomorrow. And if you want to stay up to wait for all of that, I'm all for you. But you've been watching the television, and you've been listening to the reports. And I believe that it's fair to say that we have done much better than most observers had thought we would, and about as good as I thought we would. I tell you, you know me, and you know that I'm generally a rather optimistic man. And tonight I feel that way. I feel that this election has been not only a rewarding experience for me, but I feel that by the time that the turn of day comes tomorrow, that you and I are going to be a lot happier and much more cheerful than we are even tonight. Thank you very much.
But among Hubert Humphrey's aides, there is now a feeling of dejection and despair. Jack Perkins reports from Humphrey headquarters in Minneapolis.
Well, the day did turn, and it is cold and bleak in Minneapolis, and we have not heard from Mr. Humphrey since that optimistic statement of last night. We were told last night that by this hour he might have something to say, or at least the press should start gathering and be alert and ready. So we are here and alert and ready, and he is not here yet. He probably, one must assume, will not say anything yet until there is something decisive to say. To speculate would be perhaps a little improper or unnecessary as to what Mr. Humphrey will do if he does not win this election now. Immediately, he will probably go back home to Waverly sometime today. It's about an hour away from here. Maybe back to Washington. He had planned to go to the Virgin Islands for a week or two. He'd been thinking about that if he won. But now we understand Spiro Agnew has made reservations for the Virgin Islands. So we can't say what his immediate plans will be. He has said, when asked in the past what he would do if he lost this election, he has said he would like to write, maybe his memoirs. He would like to teach political science. He would like to travel and be a free spirit. We don't know whether he is contemplating these things yet this morning or not. He probably has much more immediate problems on his mind, like Illinois, Missouri, and Texas. Jack Perkins, NBC News, at Humphrey headquarters in Minneapolis.
We'll have more election coverage and news for you in just a moment. This is Today on NBC.